I heard someone say, you ever notice how some people don't apologize? They just act normal again and expect you to forget? It's so true. They don't take accountability.
People that don't have self-esteem don't apologize. They don't examine their part in things. They don't learn from their mistakes. And so they don't mature. And so that person with a lot of ego and no self-esteem, if you try and say, hey, I want to talk about something you said a few weeks ago, or I want to talk about an experience I had with you that doesn't feel good, they'll overreact because the minute they feel guilty, they come out swinging and they'll attack you. They'll flip the subject onto, but you, they'll start accusing you. They'll lie. They'll panic because they, again, believe they're bad and that you're pointing it out. They don't hear, hey, something you did didn't feel good. They hear you're bad. So they attack, swing, criticize, change the subject.
If you have somebody in your life who doesn't want to apologize or take accountability, or you might find never has the ability to apologize, you might want to listen to this. So, the identity threat. For most people, an apology is a way to fix a relationship. For non-apologizers, an apology is an admission that they are a bad person. They struggle to separate their actions from their character. So typically you'll find individuals with low self-esteem will exhibit this behavior. Normal logic. I did a bad thing, so I should apologize. Their logic. If I did a bad thing, I am a bad person. Since I can't accept being a bad person, I didn't do a bad thing. So fragile self-esteem, like I just mentioned. It sounds counterintuitive, but people who refuse to apologize often have very fragile egos. They view an apology as a sign of weakness or a loss of power. To them, admitting a mistake feels like opening a door to being permanently devalued or attacked. Different internal scripts. Some people grow up in environments where apologies were weaponized or used as a way to shame others. They might have developed these defense mechanisms. So deflecting. I wouldn't have shouted if you had pushed my buttons. Minimizing. You're just being too sensitive, it wasn't a big deal. And gaslighting. That never happened, you're remembering it wrong. So these are all these are all exhibited behaviors of self-esteem and lack of accountability. Low emotional intelligence. In some cases, the person genuinely lacks cognitive empathy. They might understand that you are upset, but they cannot wrap their head around why their specific action caused that feeling. If it wouldn't have hurt them, they assume your reaction is irrational and therefore doesn't require an apology. If you're waiting for a sorry that isn't coming, you have a few options. So you can focus on the future. Instead of asking for an apology, say, next time could you please, instead. Or set a boundary. I can't continue this conversation if my feelings are constantly going to be dismissed. Or release the need. Accept that their inability to apologize is a limitation in them and not a reflection of your worth. So a quick reality check. You can't logic someone into an apology. If they feel backed into a corner, they will likely double down on their denial to protect their ego. And this is one of the most difficult things to identify in a lot of relationships, because it isn't until we reach past, the first 6 months or even the first year or 2 years where we start to see the true colors of a lot of individuals. Not being able to apologize for something is one of a key factor of somebody who is emotionally unavailable. From my experience in a lot of personal relationships that I've had, people who are unable to apologize are more than likely unable to take accountability for anything they ever do wrong until they change. Food for thought.
According to psychology, if somebody finds it regularly difficult to apologize or even impossible, they're likely experiencing something called an ego defense mechanism. This is because they've tied being right to their ego and identity. So in order to admit that they're wrong, they are admitting that their identity has been lessened. Their sense of self-worth is tied to being competent and correct in every situation. And for them to admit that they are incorrect, it's like admitting that their self-worth has just dropped.
A wise man once said, Some people will never apologize for what they did to you, but they will judge you and blame you for how you reacted. Here's why. When you break down, go cold, pull away, your reaction becomes the story, and the story protects them. Because if you're the problem, they don't have to be the cause. Your pain is inconvenient. Your reaction is loud. And loud is easier to point at than quiet cruelty. So they skip the apology and go straight to the verdict. Judging your reaction is how they erase what created it.
Smart people always avoid the person who can never admit when they're wrong. An adult who hasn't learned to apologize is really just a child in grown-ups' clothing. If sorry ain't in your vocabulary, sorry, you ain't in my life.
People who grew up in families where no one apologized after disagreements and would just let time pass instead of actually resolving things often become anxious adults who overshare, overexplain, overcommunicate, and feel uneasy until things are settled.
I just find it crazy how don't nobody apologize no more. People just disappear and they call it moving on. Accountability dies somewhere between pride and ego. People would rather lose a relationship with someone than admit that they were wrong. It's crazy how we've normalized walking away instead of working through it. Communication became optional. Ghosting became the standard response to discomfort. Even closure ain't even guaranteed anymore. People just leave you with questions and call it self-care. Growth without honesty isn't growth. It's just avoidance wearing a better outfit.
Your healing cannot depend on an apology from someone who refuses to acknowledge how they've harmed you. Here are 4 reminders for people who can relate. From a licensed therapist and certified trauma professional, make sure you listen to the last. It's tied right into the first. First, another person refusing to acknowledge their behavior does not make your experiences less real or valid. Second, no matter how clearly you express yourself, you can't control someone else's perceptions or reactions, so your healing cannot depend on their validation. Third, sometimes we have to create our own closure, and if it can't come from their apology, then it must come from accepting their character, how that differs from what we are willing to tolerate, and allowing ourselves to accept support from those who are in our corner. Fourth, staying hyper-focused on an apology you will never receive will keep you trapped in a cycle of self-abandonment. Your energy is precious, and best focus on your next steps for moving forward.
Some people apologize, but nothing actually changes. They say, "I'm sorry you feel that way." That's not accountability. That's emotional repositioning. A real apology sounds different. It takes responsibility without blaming your reaction. We'll see you next time.